Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is Doc Pete, and we are just happy you tuned in. This particular lesson will deal with geometry, or your intro to geometry. I'm going to give you some basic simple principles because really math is easy, especially if you had a good teacher, and you all do today. We've taken over let's just say 90 students to their graduation through the U.S. Department of Education. Autistic people, ADHD people, and we love it. We loved them, and that's how we got them there. We loved them there with prayer, and we loved them there with patience. That's how they passed. And guess what? U.S. Department of Education gave out $3,500 per graduate. And believe me, we were the company was very happy with our results. But anyway, that's an individual effort, and only by grace of God was I there and alive to talk about it. First of all, I want to give you some basic formulas. Again, if you have your tables memorized, you'll be able to know this right away, because base times height on a rectangular structure is what, if you look at that one right there, is what we get for our determination of area. Okay, let's just say 3 feet, and this is the depiction of feet. That's a little apostrophe behind the number. 3 feet by 7 feet is what this particular structure called a rectangle exists as their dimensions. Okay, so 3 times 7 is what? Okay, you got that right away. 21. All right. As you could tell in our picture before, you can go back and pause this particular one that we showed you. You can pause it and go back and show it. Or no, I'll just show you again and pause it now. If you notice, we shaded in half of it to depict a triangle, because even though for a rectangle, base times height will give you the area of a rectangle, for a triangle, 1/2 of base times height. And sometimes I need to mention this in terms of, this is a variable here, B and H, and if you want to determine what that is in a word problem, you isolate your base, or you isolate your height, you isolate what's in front of it, your 1/2, for example, to get rid of it. To do since 1 is divided by 2 and the 1/2, to get rid of the 1/2, you had to multiply by 2. To get rid of the base, since base is multiplied times height, you have to divide. And I'll show you some expressions about that where we give one and don't give the other, and we try to figure out what it exists, and we'll go over that later. But anyway, if we look at the top number, if you notice now, what I try to depict, and you can pause it, go back and pause, that a rectangle has what? 2 triangles in it. So that's how the formula came up. If you look at that bottom structure and actually isolate the one on top, we're going to take off the one that we had shaded, and you'll see that that's still the base and the height, but we took off half of the rectangle, and that's where we get the formula, 1/2 of base times height. Now, base times height is the same as length times width, and you'll get that later. I'm not going to try to confuse you on that, but I don't think you're too immature to be introduced to this particular concept of geometry to wrap your brain around. I just wanted to give you a little one-up on what we can do. So anyway, if 1/2 base times height equals the area of a triangle, what is the following? Let's plug in some numbers. Our base is 6, our height is 5, and so 1/2 of 6 is what? You can pause that thing and get that answer to me, and then you end up with 3 times 5 equals what? 15. So now again, if you were talking about the whole rectangle, in this case, it would probably be some oblique structure that we have half of here with that almost an isosceles, not isosceles, but equilateral triangle, but almost as close. But 5 times 6 would be the area if we had the whole rectangle. And I could probably draw that out to equal something like this. And let's see here. Wow, I couldn't do it. That's okay. I'm not going to try to fool you on that, but or make you think that I can draw. But anyway, 1/2 of base times height is your triangular area, and you can either play with that, memorize it, go up and down. Let's give you another one. Our area equals 30. Our base is 8. What is our height? Okay, so we just put the numbers in. We need to solve for h. Now this is what I talked about earlier in terms of your word problems may give you part of the variable. As long as you know the formula, you can figure it out if you have one missing. So go ahead and multiply that out. So 1/2 of 8 is what? 4. And 4 times your height equals 30. So how do we get height isolated? Again, we need to isolate variables sometime. If we're multiplying 4 times h, here's where we get real simple now. Multiplication is the opposite of what? Division. Subtraction is the opposite of what? Addition. Okay? I can get into some psychology on that, but we go ahead and go with 4 into both sides of the equation, and we get height is going to have to be, in this case, 7, and guess what? 2/4. 7.5. And I'm not going to go through the math. I'm going to let you do that later. That's going to conclude this particular session, your intro to geometry. We love you. There's nothing you can do about it.